And we're back. Now, we're the overtime section. We can let our hair down. The Barklage rule doesn't even apply here. Let's talk with Tashard Jones. Interesting race. There's something going on in St. Louis. Bruce Franks wins a re-election, a bit of an oddity, but he wins it big, and he wins it with a coalition that I have not personally witnessed in the state of Missouri very often. Bernie Sanders supporters, you have some very, very liberal folks, very, very motivated. How did that come about?
Well, it's simple. The elections are simple. Get your voters to the polls, and Bruce Franks did that twice. Also, I think what we see is a new coalition. Steve Phillips wrote a book called Brown is the New White. There's a new American majority that includes people from all different backgrounds, and that is the majority that elected Bruce Franks. And I think after this election cycle, the electorate is awake, and they want to get involved. They want to run for office. We saw Democratic committee races up and down the ticket, all in play.
That was interesting.
That was very interesting. So I think what we see is sort of a Bernie Sanders effect of people being awake and wanting to be involved and asking for more from the people that they elect.
Ray Orman, did Hillary Clinton win the election, but did Bernie Sanders win the party?
I don't think so, really, but I do think Bernie Sanders made an amazing impact on not only the party, but the country, really, in some
To me,
respects.
just saying the word socialist is bizarre, but there's a whole group of people that embrace it.
Well, he certainly, and I'm not a socialist, and I embrace Bernie Sanders, but I wish he were the candidate right now, but he isn't. I really think Bruce Franks is an exciting new candidate, type of representative. And I'm really interested in watching how he does when he gets to Jefferson City, because he couldn't be more different than Penny Hubbard. And I
mean, when you have to vote, as you know, you have to push a red or a green button. They're probably going to push the same button.
Well,
most
she
of the time,
pushed some buttons that weren't so on occasion, on veto overrides, and particularly after certain kinfolk got different kind of positions in lobbying positions, and then she changed her vote on a couple of things. So I think she was really somebody who actually deserved to lose, to be frank, and Franks. And
I think that coalition.
I think I wasn't part of anything. I wasn't part of the coalition. I was a total outside observer, but. I think the guy's a breath of fresh air, and I think it's. And can I say one other thing? This whole voter, whatever happened with the absentee ballots on our show, it's been said, well, this is going to hurt the Democrats in the voter ID thing, and maybe it will, but it shouldn't, because it had absolutely the kind of voter fraud that takes place in absentee ballots, I'm sure routinely, is a big problem, but it is not addressed by voter ID. And I have never once heard anybody explain how photo ID works.
I mean, how the real beneficiary of this new coalition may be a certain candidate for mayor. Obviously, we wouldn't mention any names, but. Do you think there's an issue, though? Bruce Franks comes to Jeff City. He's won this huge, high-visibility race, but in reality, he's going to be the member of the super minority, and he really only gets to speak if the speaker calls on him. There may be a little bit of a culture shock. He's going to be on This Week in Missouri Politics next week, but there may be a culture shock if he's won this big race that's had all this attention. But when you get to Jeff City, it's not that big a deal.
It's tough to sit on that side of the aisle when you're not in the majority. And of course, I don't know him personally, but I said kudos to him and his attorney for confronting the first election and
Never seen anything like it.
Taking down the Hubbard dynasty. It's basically what happened. And being able to win in that second election was a big thing for him, and I think he's going to go to Jeff City, and I think he's going to work hard for his party and contribute in any way he can.
Maybe what comes out of this, if there's more scrutiny on the absentee voting process in the city of St. Louis, that's going to help Republicans, right?
I think it's going to help Jay Ashcroft.
There's not going to be more absentees filed now, right?
I think it'll help Jay Ashcroft with voter ID and the Secretary of State's race.
I disagree. I think absentee voting, the absentee thing that happened in this election is not related to voter ID. I think what we see is the laws haven't kept up with the technology. We now are able to vote electronically, and the laws that are currently on the books say they have to be in envelopes. So when you vote electronically, you don't have, the receipt is on that little ticker that goes through the machine. And so unless they're going to print it out for every person that votes and then put that in a ballot in an envelope and let you sign it, then that's where, where you keep up with where the two meet.
But the more scrutiny on this, the less absentees there'll be. That doesn't help any Democrats.
I think that's a fair point. I think what isn't, I agree with Jashara, though. I do not understand how this has anything to do with voter impersonation. And that's
I think it points to a bigger problem, though. Every time there's an election in St. Louis, there's a problem.
But let's talk about voter impersonation. I have to admit, I am not smart enough to have figured out how you could actually pull off a campaign of voter impersonation. But I will say this: if you are, in other words, I don't know, you have to have people who have. I guess they would have to have utility bills or something to match people who are registered voters, but not being them, and somehow get it. In other words, I don't understand how you would actually do it. But I will say this: if you are smart enough to figure that out, to make a scheme out of voter impersonation, somehow I think you're smart enough to find fake IDs. In other words, I don't understand how you could possibly.
I did in college, so
how
maybe
could you
case
possibly, when you actually, people say voter ID, and there's a reason to have voter ID, because it makes it more difficult for people disproportionately Democrat, including but not limited to people who use public transportation, don't have driver's licenses, disabled people, elderly. A lot of people who don't have driver's licenses are given a hurdle that, yes, they can clear it, but it's a hurdle. And it slows you down, and it makes it less likely to vote. That's the reason for this. But somebody explain to me how voter impersonation would even work if you tried it.
Let's while we do, let's talk about a couple polls. Poll shows Jay Ashcroft up 10 points, Josh Hawley up 9 points over Teresa Hensley. Elaine Gannon, Jay Ashcroft looks like he's on the way to winning.
I think Jay Ashcroft will win. He has the name recognition. He supports voter ID. He's smart, and I think he's going to win.
Dave Wessing, you're an attorney. Josh Hawley looks like the front runner, but I mean, Teresa Hensley has a resume that can compete.
That's correct. I do not know Teresa. I've met Josh Hawley, very impressive young man. He's an up-and-comer.
Absolutely. Robin Smith, is there a path for her to win this race?
Yeah, absolutely. If she gets out there and works the 70 corridor, she needs to work Kansas City, Columbia, and St. Louis, and that's where a bulk of the votes are going to come from. I've seen her several places out there working. I'm starting to see her signs in places, and if the Missouri Democratic Party gets its act together and really puts together a coordinated campaign with all of its statewide.
It's getting late, though. I mean,
I know it's late, but I just had to say it. I'm a Democrat. I got to say it.
You've seen a lot of general elections.
I would say, first of all, a lot depends on the presidential. That swing could be big either way with Trump and Hillary. So that's one factor. The other thing I think is interesting in this race is that in the year of the outsider, two of the people that would appear to be likely to win, although I think Robin has a chance, one's named Ashcroft, one name's Carnahan. And so it's the year of the outsider, but I think Russ Carnahan is probably going to win the lieutenant governor's race, and I think Jay Ashcroft's the front.
Quick parting takes. Let's talk about the HISEP bill real quick.
Well, thank you, Scott. Let me set the table for this
Yes, ma'am.
bill, okay? The events of Ferguson and the failed school transfer bill brought issues of income and race into the spotlight. And we need to get past the politics, the fear, and the hate, and work together to help students find a job, a viable job, and live a life of decency.
And this allows folks to take the GED at no cost the
Yes,
first time.
my bill, the HISET, will make the test free for all first-time test takers in the state of Missouri. And we know that it's difficult to get a job without a high school diploma. Students who live in shelters cannot afford to pay for the test, and the test is $95. And it's either pay now or pay later to the social welfare system. And so this bill will also bring awareness of the poverty that's across our state. And this bill, the HISET, passed both houses last year unanimously. but did not make it across the finish line. So I'm going to bring the bill forward again this session, and hopefully we're going to get it done. And I want to thank you for allowing me to talk about the bill on your show today.
David Washington, thank you so much for the hat.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Love the article about the work camp you called to be shut down in St. Louis.
Workhouse, yes.
Always glad to have, very honored to have you on, sir. My parting take as we tape this, the Cardinals are 4-1 during Oktoberfest, and RIP Eric the actor. We'll see you next week on This Week in Missouri Politics.